Hi Karen, how are you doing?
Hi, how are you, Dr. Dasku?
I'm busy.
Hi.
I just had an email exchange with Stephanie actually, so not about pleasant things unfortunately, but it is how it is. So uh, I'm pretty sure she's very busy too. I'm so happy that she accepted to give this talk. Hi Bhavani, how are you doing?
Hi, fine. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm
Yeah,
here actually.
just finished the project report for NSF.
Okay, that's
And
good.
oh gosh, I got all these new every month it's changing. I mean every year it's changing.
Every year
The
is
annual
changes. We need to add more
stuff.
files, more documents, more
Yeah,
reporting.
more things. I'll be back in a second, okay?
Okay.
Just 1 second. Yeah.
I'm here with my cats, two cats, and see if I can
Oh.
get on my laptop.
Oh, that's a pretty cat.
Tuxedo. 7 years old. I got this cat when he was like 3 months old. So a puppy cat, and had it for 7 years.
Wow.
There you go.
Yeah, we
And
had a cat adopt our family once, and she lived to be about 13.
you know, maybe even more than that if they are taken good care of. We'll see.
So, Dr. Dasku, when I'm about to introduce Dr. Adams, would you like to say a few words?
I will just say a little bit. I will just say welcome to the series, and happy to see everyone coming. But other than that, I mean, you go ahead and introduce
Okay,
Dr. Adam.
sounds good.
So it's you, the three of you are running this event. So I want you to
Yeah.
take the credit and have the visibility. That's what I told Bhavani some time back. I say I'm gonna sit back on this. Uh, you know, each of us have our own functions and our own time to get visibility and shine. And I think this one is for you. So
Okay. All
just
right.
just go ahead.
So how many participants are there? I hope a lot of people are there.
Um,
Oh,
I
Dr.
think
Adams is there too, right?
So we have 18. Oh, she is. Then she could hear what we were talking about. Okay, hi Stephanie.
I see. She says no. What's no response? No, no, she's not there yet.
She's not there. Okay,
I
okay,
don't think. Yeah, others invited.
okay. Yes.
Elaine and Sarah and Amanda. Okay, Adams. And there are others from chat. There are 14, 20 people in this meeting.
Yes. So that's what I see now. Yes, 20.
Yeah.
And that's very good. It's a good number.
It's a good number. Yeah.
Actually, similar to what we are having when we are doing this face to face.
But one thing though, Ovidu, it's again the faculty of instruction, right? I mean, you don't see many, I see Michelle,
Yeah.
Sangeeta, Norma. We don't see the tenure track faculty. I'm very upset.
I know that Babani. Tell me about it more because I know that and we repeated it and how.
Yeah. It's almost like, I mean, I try to make it for this. I mean, some meetings I can't, but I try. But then this is, very,
I know
very,
you are one of the busiest, and yet you made it to quite a few. And
yes, I made it to quite a few. But the thing is, I don't see anyone. Sorry, I know Dr. Adams is here. I shouldn't be saying much.
we do have Bill Pavin. Hi, Bill. How are you doing?
You saw her.
now I see
Okay.
Dr. Adams is with us
Yeah.
now.
Hi, Stephanie. I think
Hello.
respect the time of Dr. Adams. Now that she joined, we are supposed to start at 7 p.m. and we have 31 people attending this meeting, so that's quite a good number. So, Dr. Adams, thank you very much for accepting to be with us tonight and give the first talk in this fall series, because this is the first one for this academic year. We appreciate this very much. We know how busy you are, and we have these three amazing faculties that are in charge of this series, and in discussion with me, we all agree that you are going to be the best speaker to start the series for this academic year. I'll let Karen Mazidi now give a formal introduction for you. I'm pretty sure that almost everyone, if not all of them here, know very well about you, but still, let's start with a formal introduction. Karen, please take over.
Thank you very much, and we are very much honored to have our dean speaking to us today. She's actually the 5th dean of the Erik Jonsson School of Engineering and Computer Science. And she's also well known as the past president of ASEE, American Society of Engineering Educators. And she's been the dean of the Frank Batten College of Engineering and Technology at Old Dominion, department head and professor of engineering at Virginia Tech, and she's held faculty and administrative positions at Virginia Commonwealth University and the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. So Dean Adams' research interests include broadening participation, faculty and graduate student development, international global education, teamwork and effectiveness, and she has received the Career Award from the Engineering, Education, and Centers Division of the NSF. Dr. Adams is a leader in the advancement and inclusion of all in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So we are very pleased to have Dr. Adams, and we will turn the meeting over to her at this point.
Thank you, Karen, for the introduction, and thanks everyone for coming out on a Tuesday night. I do think it's still Tuesday. I think my days are running together this week. I'm really excited to see so many students here and some of our colleagues. I guess naively so, I didn't expect there to be any faculty members here, so I thought it was going to be me and the students. I'm not going to change my presentation, but the faculty might be surprised to learn some things about me. And now that I see that we're recording, maybe I should take some slides out. But it's people, it's well known, and I mean, I shouldn't say well known, but people know it, and it's part of my story. And I think that gives me perspective for talking with our students. So I'm going to share my screen. I think I still remember how to do that. Yeah, I was just on a Teams meeting before, so I know how to share. I'm joking. I do know how to share my screen. And let me start my slides. Okay, so I decided to, this is my title, Wouldn't Take Nothing from My Journey from Dropout to Dean. And the title, Wouldn't Take Nothing from My Journeys, from a book by Maya Angelou that I read in grad school. And so I think it's appropriate. I always like to tell people what I was asked to talk about. So my agenda today, they wanted me to speak from my heart and mind about women in technology, and then also to share personal experience, discuss broader societal concerns, or give practical career advice. So I'm going to kind of do two first and then end with number one, because I really wanted to connect with the students and sort of meet you where you are. So as I said, I'm putting some things out there that I wasn't expecting faculty per se to hear, but we'll go with it, and hopefully there's no judgment. So Karen, thank you for the introduction. And I typically do a little bit of that myself because it helps to connect my journey and how I got to where I'm at. So I consider myself an education brat. My dad was a university administrator, so I moved around a lot. So we were at a small college in Virginia, then we were in Syracuse, New York. At Syracuse, then we went to Notre Dame, and then he actually still worked for Notre Dame, but based out of Georgia Tech. It's a weird combination. That's his story to tell. And so we were at a lot of different college campuses, which I think is part of the reason I ended up going into the professoriate. I really just like the energy of a college campus. So my formal training, I went to North Carolina A&T, which is a small historically Black college in Greensboro, North Carolina. Then I worked for 3M, the 3M Corporation, and for NASA. So between my undergrad work and my master's work, I spent most of my time in those two places. I aspired to be a biomedical engineer. So most of the work that I did at 3M was in the biomedical area. So I worked on surgical skin staplers, artificial shoulders and hips, braces, carbon electrodes, ear plug devices, the little spongy things you put in your ear to block sound. I worked on some of those. I got the chance to do some medical testing on animals, which was, I mean, it's ethical treatment of animals, but it was pretty cool for a college kid to be in a surgical lab, trying out different instruments and things like that. And with NASA, I worked on Kevlar, which is, it's used in police protective gear, but it's also used in space as a tether when astronauts go out from the shuttle. So that was pretty fun. I had a gym fellowship to go to UVA for my master's degree, and then I worked at Texas Tech after my master's degree. So my first foray to Texas, and then I went to NC State back on the East Coast. And so I ran student support programs. So I worked with a lot of recruiting students to come into engineering, providing them academic success strategies while they were pursuing engineering. And I quickly figured out that I'd reached the glass ceiling with my master's degree. So I went back to get a PhD. And then I've lived in 11 different states, and I've lived in Venezuela twice for 6 weeks each. So that was pretty fun. I speak Spanish, and after about 2 weeks, I'm pretty fluent and can function. So you can't go there now because of the climate down there, but it was pretty fun at the time to do that. Okay, so then I did my PhD at Texas A&M. So my second foray to Texas, he's going to get this East Coast Texas kind of thing going. But I studied interdisciplinary engineering, so I was able to complete my own degree program. I tell people it's like going to the Golden Corral on a Friday. You can get steak, pizza, shrimp, hamburgers, fried chicken, and all kind of salad stuff. So you kind of make your own degree plan. So I studied industrial engineering and management at the intersection of those two areas. And my dissertation topic was an investigation of the attributes contributing to team effectiveness of engineering and science faculty. So it's a little bit different than most engineering PhDs that you hear about, but it was pretty fun and rewarding. And so then I left A&M and I went to Nebraska, and Karen told you all the schools that I was at. So I had, increasing administrative duties at each institution. And so at the end of this past spring, I finished my 23rd year in higher ed, and I've spent 18 years as an administrator, which is pretty rare. Most people don't go into administration until they're probably in their 9th, 10th, 15th year, past their PhD. I went into administration in the 4th year past my PhD. So I got tracked into this pretty early. And then I have a pretty broad professional network. So I've been a member of a lot of boards. This is probably acronym soup for many of you, but the National Society of Black Engineers, the Women in Engineering Pro Active Network, ABET, NOAA, and ASEE. I've been board members or consultants for each of these organizations in a variety of roles, culminating with, as Karen told you, being president of my professional society. So it's been pretty rewarding journey, a lot of visibility, which has its pros and cons to it. I think as I get older, I like less visibility than more visibility, but it was an honor to serve. And I think the highlight of my presidential year, aside from the fact that it got, what's the word I want to use? Hijacked by COVID, because I can't think of a better word. I got to go to Tokyo and represent the American Society of Engineering Education at the Japanese Society of Engineering Education. So I got to meet colleagues from Japan, Korea, Malaysia, Thailand. It's really, really exciting. And then to hear about what their faculty are working on, what their students' experience was like, was just very, very rewarding. And to be able to represent your country in something like that's pretty special. So got a chance to do that. So what have I learned? So this is where I really like to speak to students about my journey and lessons that I've learned, because you hear all that and you go, oh, you can't understand my plight. You don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like to be a woman in computing. You don't know what it's like to be a first-generation college student. You don't know what it's like. Well, I may not know exactly your situation, but I've got lots of anecdotal stories that I think we can all connect around. So let me jump in that. So the first lesson that I like to tell people is play the hand you're dealt, right? And so I play poker. As a matter of fact, I went to the casino on Sunday and I spent 6 hours up at the casino. I didn't have a good outing that day, but it was fun to be out of the house for a little bit. But the thing about poker, and I play Texas Hold'em. So you get these two cards, and statistically speaking, 2-7 offsuit, meaning they're not matching, is the worst hand you can start with. The best hand you can start with before any cards hit the table are pocket aces. So statistically speaking, those are the strength of the hands, right? So everybody wants to start with pocket aces, but sometimes people start with 2-7. And it was funny, and this is a talk that I give a lot with this particular slide, so I didn't change it. But there was a guy at the table on Sunday who won 3 hands with 2-7. And he bluffed. I mean, he just bluffed people. He bet aggressively. He bet in position. And people were like, oh, so some people called him and then some people folded. And so a couple times he actually showed his hand and there was like nothing on the board. And he won with 2-7. He bullied people out of the hand. So you can be very successful with 2-7. Everybody doesn't get a chance to start with pocket aces. So you got to play the hand you're dealt. Now, these are my parents. And both of them were first-generation college students. I'll tell you a little something about each of them. So my dad was the son of a tobacco farmer and a cook. He was a C student in high school. He got a chance to go to college because he slept on his aunt's sofa for 4 years. So I laugh and tell people, would you get up every morning and fold up a sofa just so you could go to college? I mean, we think about all the things that we have today, but what is it that you want bad enough that you would sacrifice? You can't live in a dorm. You can't have an apartment. You have to live in a 1-bedroom with your aunt sleeping on the sofa for 4 years, and you can't leave it unmade. I am notorious for not making my bed. And as a teenager, my mom's like, could you make your bed? And I'm like, no, I'm just going to get back in it. So why make the bed, right? But, you know, you're living in somebody else's house. So my dad had to make his bed. He worked his way through undergrad all the time. My mom was the daughter of a Navy seaman and a housewife and the great-granddaughter of a slave. So it's not that far removed in my family, this whole access to education and being able to go. As a matter of fact, both my parents were born in Virginia. My dad finished high school in 58. My mom finished high school in 60. And by law, they could not go to any of the schools that I worked at. And I worked at ODU, Virginia Tech, and VCU, and I studied at UVA. So 4 of the 5 premier institutions in Virginia by law, my parents couldn't go to. So, you know, you could say, well, we're not going to go to college at all, or we're going to do some things differently. Now, how did it turn out for them? That's a beautiful picture of my parents, right? So let me tell you, my dad has a BS and an MS in biology. He got a PhD in higher education. He got a chance to go to the White House and meet Bill Clinton and receive the presidential award for mentoring in science and engineering and mathematics. He's written several books. My mom also was a biology major. So, yep, they met in science class in college, has a master's in education. But in 1994, at 51, she finished her PhD in microbiology and cell science at the University of Florida. So my mom at 45 decided to go back to school and get a PhD in molecular biology. So you're never too old to do something different, right? So you don't have to get everything right the first time. And she was a great high school science teacher in Atlanta after she finished her PhD. I think she would have liked to have gone to the collegiate setting, but there were some sexism issues around salary and getting a PhD in biology and being 51 and wanting to start a college career as a faculty member. She could actually make more as a high school biology teacher. So she went and took the high school biology teacher, but then she had students doing undergraduate research in DNA, and she was advising their science projects and just all kinds of stuff, which is how she won the district science teacher of the year. So the point about it is, it doesn't matter how you start, it's how you finish. Okay, so those are my parents. So how did I start and finish? Well, that was me sophomore year in high school. I actually had more gray hair then than I have now, which I think is really fascinating. But in any case, I took all the advanced high school math and science courses that my high school offered, but I had a low SAT score, which is really interesting because, if you look at the data says that, kids who have the kind of parents that I have should have tested very well because they had every opportunity afforded to them. But I just don't test well. I mean, my GRE score was crap. My SAT score was crap, but it doesn't define, what I was capable of doing. So people say, well, how bad was it? Okay, this is my college transcript. I graduated with honors. Let's blow up the red box. So my SAT score combined was 900. That's it. So the funny thing is I could not get into any school that I've worked at today with that SAT score. If somebody didn't go look at my high school grades and look at the fact that I had gone to summer engineering camps, I had designed all kind of things. I was in the science club. We didn't have AP classes when I finished high school, but we had advanced chemistry, advanced physics, advanced biology, and calculus. And we had calculus for a whole year. So I had everything that you could have. I just don't test well. So, some people could look at that and say, can't come to our school. Some will go, well, we need to look at other things, which is why I'm a proponent of looking at the whole person and not just one score on a test that says that's going to determine what I can and can't do for the rest of my life. So that's a lesson learned. So now the dropout piece. So I actually dropped out of college the second week of school my sophomore year. So I started at University of Wisconsin-Madison. And then I dropped out again in grad school midway through the first semester. So my boyfriend was killed in a car accident in college. The summer I got out of college. He was still in college. And I just was not really focused. So I dropped out for in November, I guess. And I was out from November to January, mid-January. I looked for jobs and things like that. And I got a couple offers, but my heart just wasn't in going to work in industry at that point. So I went back to grad school, changed my major, and the rest has been kind of history, except for the fact that when I got ready to go to Northwestern to get a PhD, they said, that little test thing again. So my GRE scores were not a whole lot better than my SAT scores. So I got admitted, but I didn't get any funding to go to grad school. Actually, take that back. I got admitted to Carnegie Mellon without funding. I did not get admitted to Northwestern, which was my first choice. So I didn't go at that point. I waited. I worked for a couple of years. And then actually, matter of fact, Texas A&M called me and said, hey, you have expressed some interest in getting a PhD. We've got this new program. If you want to come and get a PhD, we've got a full fellowship for you. And it paid tuition, a stipend, computer, books, my parking pass, everything. I mean, everything was free for my PhD. As a matter of fact, I made money in grad school. So I didn't, I had an assistantship and a fellowship, and it worked out pretty well. So again, the one score shouldn't dictate and determine what I'm capable of doing, but for some people, it can be a hindrance. All right, so moving along. So my advice to you is twofold in this slide. One, believe in yourself, and two, always be you. So be true to who you are. I mean, for me, I would like to have gone to Purdue. It would have been in-state, but Purdue said, no thanks. Now they call me and say, hey, can you come do a distinguished lecture for our students? Can you come do this? Northwestern called me about 10 years ago to come and be a distinguished lecturer. And people are sitting there like, why is this person familiar? And then finally somebody put it together. They said, oh, you came and interviewed for our PhD program, didn't you? And I was like, uh-huh. And they just sort of turned red and hung their head because it's like, you didn't see my potential. You saw a score on a piece of paper. So, if I had been a kind of person who didn't believe in myself, who wasn't always true to myself, I might have taken that form of rejection and it could have deterred me from everything I wanted to do, from all my goals, because I didn't get in. And it's like, there are 350 ABET accredited universities. So I didn't get in one place. I just went somewhere else. It's still, A&M was a great school. I mean, it's a top 15 engineering school. It probably is ranked higher than Northwestern is at this point in time. So, you got to believe in yourself, and you got to always be yourself. And how do you get that? So this is my family. I mean, I've got this huge family. So these are my great aunts and uncles across this row here. And there were 20 of them. So my grandfather, these are my paternal grandparents, and these are my maternal grandparents. And so I'm an only kid, so I was kind of doted on a lot. And but that my family gave me the confidence to be me, to be okay. And when I go home, they couldn't be prouder. They write to me, it's like, Dr. Stephanie, how you doing? I mean, my aunts call me Dr. Stephanie. My dad calls me Dr. Stephanie. I'm like, I just tell people I'm just Stephanie. I'm always the same person that I was. The title doesn't mean anything. But it grounded me, and it let me know that I came from a very strong network of people, and there's nothing that I can't do. All right. So you got to have that confidence as well. All righty. So she told you all about that. The interesting point about this slide, there are 39 full professors, African-American women, out of 29,544 as reported by ASEE. So I'm like less than 1% of all the people in the country that have a PhD, which is, when you think about it, mind-blowing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So, we do need more women and women of color in STEM disciplines, because, I'll talk about that a little bit later. So let me keep going, because I've got some other points to make there. So next lesson, find your passion. This is actually one of my things I'm passionate about is travel, and the other one is photography. So this is actually a picture that I took out in New Mexico a couple summers. I was in the balloon one above this one, so out here somewhere, and I'm shooting back on all these hot air balloons. And that trip just spoke to me about passion and being able to see broadly, and being true to yourself. So figure out what you're passionate about and stick to it. Don't let anybody, people will always try to move you, and you want to expand your horizons, but at the end of the day, that core of what you're passionate about has to motivate and drive you. And so I don't need anybody else to motivate me. I am so intrinsically motivated because I'm passionate about what I'm doing. And that's my best advice to you guys. Okay, so you'll find I like quotes, and I'm happy to send the quotes to you guys, but passion is what gives meaning to our lives. It's what allows us to achieve success beyond our wildest imagination, which is why I like this notion of the balloons, because you're out imagining what else is out there. You're out in space and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool. Okay, so have a goal. So your goals are the roadmap that guide you and show you what's possible for your life. I knew at 7 I was going to be a doctor. I thought I would be an OBGYN, but I knew I was going to be a doctor. I also decided at 7 I was going to make a lot of money, and I probably was going to make more money than anybody I would ever be married to. So I was never going to let money be an issue in a relationship. And so far it hasn't been. But the goal at 7 of becoming an OBGYN set me up for when I got to high school, making sure I had the right science courses and the right math courses. And then I injured my knee, so playing basketball. And then my dad was working with engineers. So that's when I got introduced to biomedical engineering, along with going to some of these summer camps. But it was that original goal that put me on the path. And when I was in undergrad, my junior year, I thought this engineering thing is for the birds. I'm going to go be a business major. So I went over to the business school, and I was an honor student. They always think engineers come to business because they have flunked out of engineering. So they talk real nasty to you. They're real curt. Why are you here? Fill out a form. And then when you do all of that and they see your grades, and they go, oh, well, yes, let's work with you. Work out a degree plan and da-da-da-da. They got all excited. And when they did that, it was going to take me a semester longer if I changed majors. And I'm like, well, I might as well stay in engineering, and I'll figure this out later. And then later, I ended up doing a PhD, half in engineering and half in management. So I still got to get all the courses I would have gotten as an undergrad, but I probably, have done a lot better for myself going that route than if I had been a business major, unless I ended up at, some CEO of some company, which that wouldn't have been my passion anyway. So, okay, so seize opportunities. Everybody wants to be in the bowl with everybody else. And sometimes you got to be in your own bowl. You got to leave that bowl and go over here. So for me, when I finished my PhD in 98, everybody I knew wanted to go to Atlanta. Like for some reason, that was the place to be, going to Atlanta. And I actually got a job offer from Atlanta, and then I got a job offer from this university in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm like, I don't know where Lincoln, Nebraska is. We went on a family vacation when I was 15, and we drove through Nebraska, and my parents tried to wake me up like every 10 miles. Stephanie, wake up. You have to see Nebraska. I'm like, why? I'm never going to come to Nebraska. So I just like slept. They'll tell you I slept all the way across Nebraska, only to have ended up living there for 10 years. And it was 10 of the best years of my life, and it really catapulted my career. Had I gone to Atlanta where everybody else wanted to be, you never know how things would have worked out. But because I took a different opportunity, I think it turned out pretty well for me. So this is the last part of Frost's famous poem, "Two roads diverging a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that made all the difference." So again, sometimes you can't march to the beat of everybody else's drum. You got to find your own, and you hope that it works out for you in the final analysis. Okay, so network, right? My grandfather, who was a tobacco farmer, who didn't know, he hadn't been to school, didn't know anything. He always used to tell us, you have to learn how to meet and greet people, which is essentially networking, right? I mean, you never know who's going to be in a position to help you. So I a number of years ago said I wanted to be a university president. And one day this email pops into my box and says, hey, there's a Women of Color Leadership Conference at Brown University hosted by then President Ruth Simmons, and you should come to this meeting. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I told a bunch of friends about it. And one of them called me back and she said, Stephanie, that's an invitation only meeting. And I'm like, oh, because the information I got didn't say that. To this day, I don't know who gave my name for me to go to that meeting. But because I had been networking with people, I had been expressing what my goals were, somebody thought I should be in the room, and it was life-changing. I mean, it was a complete life-changing experience to be there. And I said it was a women of color. So there were Hispanic women, Native American women, Asian women, African-American women, all kinds of women were there from all kinds of schools and universities. And one of the people that I met there, her name was France Cordova. She was the chancellor at UC Riverside at that meeting. She went on to become the president of Purdue, and she went on to become the head of the National Science Foundation. And I met her in 2004. You don't know where people are going to go. And there's some people that I met, the current lady, students wouldn't know this, but the current head of SACS SOC, which is our accreditation board for University of Texas, to make sure that we, have all the right kinds of credentials for our faculty and the students have the right kind of courses. Her name is Belle Whelan, and she was also at that meeting. And now we're friends on Facebook. And it's like, people are like, Belle Whelan? Yeah, I know, I met her as she was a president of a community college at the time that I met her. So networking, you never know where somebody else is going to go and where they can bring you, or when they can open a door for you or provide a letter of recommendation for you. So you have to get out and meet other people. So effective networking isn't a result of luck. It requires some hard work and persistence. So sometimes you have to keep reaching out to people and ask them, can I learn from you? What can you teach me about your journey and things like that? So seek mentors. One of the greatest values of a mentor is the ability to see what's ahead, to see ahead what others cannot see, and to help them navigate to their final destination. So, I have a group of people that have been at a variety of levels in higher ed, all the way to the president. I've got some people who were university presidents who went off to run the museums at the Smithsonian that are my mentors, and I can call them for guidance and counsel when I need a broader perspective than I can see beyond my own self. So it's nice to have mentors. Okay, stay focused. So in high school, I was a swimmer. I did not do butterfly. That was probably my worst stroke. My best stroke was freestyle. But I love this picture because this was the Olympics before Tokyo. And, Michael Phelps will go down as one of the greatest swimmers of all time. But look at this guy. What's he doing? He's looking at Michael Phelps. What's Michael Phelps doing? He's looking ahead. He doesn't care what's going on this side, that side, whatever. It's all about the bottom line is getting to the wall first. The time that it takes this guy, if you're a swimmer, you don't want to be turning your head a whole lot and contorting your body. You want to be fluid in your stroke. It's not fluid in your stroke to be doing the butterfly and then try to look to the side. That takes time off. So at the end of the day, Michael Phelps won this race, but he wasn't a shoo-in. But if you go back and watch it at the end, this guy pulls up and looks, and Phelps is just straight down, right? So you got to stay focused on what you're doing. So focus on your goal. Don't look any direction but ahead. All right. My favorite animal, the turtle. Why? Because the turtle can't move if it doesn't stick his head out. Think about that. If you see a turtle and his head stuck in, he or she's not going anywhere. They're just like a little shell stuck there, right? It's when you stick your head out and run the risk of anything happening to you that you can make progress. So from Nelson Mandela, he says, I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not one who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. And usually when I do this, I change the word to be male or female focused, but that's the quote that Nelson said today. I didn't change it. But don't let fear, everybody's afraid. If they're honest with you, they're afraid. I'm afraid some days. I'm not going to have all the right answers. I'm not going to figure it out. But some people get afraid and they get paralyzed. They retreat into their shell. I may be afraid, but I'm still out there trying to figure it out. Looking around, looking for the mentor, looking for the network, looking for other things. So don't let fear be a form of paralysis for you. Henry Ford, failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. People say, well, tell me what your greatest failure was. I never failed at anything. That's my answer. Well, what do you mean you never failed? I didn't fail, right? Well, what did you do? I learned better for the next time. So did I fail a course? I never failed a course in college. I failed 9th grade geometry, mostly because the teacher didn't like me and my parents dared me not to fail. And so I just said, what the hell, I'll fail anyway and see what they do about it, right? But I ended up having to repeat 9th grade geometry as a junior. I took it over because I needed to have the information if I was going to go into engineering. So I approached it more intelligently the second time than I did the first time. Work hard. So I need to update this one. So Alicia Crumpton Young just became the president of Texas Southern down in Houston. But many, many years ago, she said, if you spend 2 years working like others won't, you can spend the rest of your life living like others can't. So think about that. So a lot of people want a shortcut. They don't want to work hard. They want a shortcut. And sometimes shortcuts are okay, but it's the hard work that gets you further along, right? So if you work hard, if you spend time working like others won't, right? You can spend the rest of your life living like others can't. So people I went to high school with that were a whole lot smarter than I was in high school, they had better grades in high school than I did, they didn't go to college. Or they went to college and they dropped out for whatever the reason. But I just kind of put my head down and I worked hard like other people weren't willing to do. And today I have a much different life than some of them have. And it's all about some of the choices that we make and how we spend our time. So this one, I'm a basketball person. So I love this guy's story a couple years ago. But this guy actually, and I use him because he was a physicist. So he went to American University in DC and he studied physics, graduated in 4 years with a physics degree, and played basketball at American University. Didn't get drafted, bounced around to some of the NBA developmental league. And probably about 5 years ago, he got signed at the end of the season by the Lakers. And he scored more points in the game than any rookie had scored in his age group or something along the lines. But it's like he was not supposed to be an NBA player. And he kept dreaming of it and he kept dreaming of it. And he didn't get picked until he was in his 30s. but he went in and he played and he prepared himself for it, and he can say, I played for the Lakers, which is one of the premier basketball teams in the country, right? At the NBA level. So C.S. Lewis says you are never too old to set another goal or dream another dream. So if you're out there and you're like, well, what do I want to do? And I'm not quite sure, you can change your mind or you can come up with something new. So Bum Phillips, none of us are Texans now. So Bum Phillips was the head coach of the Houston, Oilers. They weren't the Texans back then. They were the Oilers. And so his quote was, winning is only half of it. Having fun is the other half. So at this juncture in life, when I look back on what I've done, I'm having a whole bunch of fun. And I have other friends that are like, they're not doing near the kind of things that I'm doing. They don't seem like they're having as much fun as I'm having. So, winning is important, but having fun is also equally important. So as a result, this is kind of fuzzy, but as a result, all the stuff in blue, and I probably need to update this, are all the places that I've been. So I think I counted it up one day and I've been to something like, 60 countries or something like that. And the majority of the time, I'm going, when I went to Venezuela, I was leading a study abroad. So that meant all of my expenses were paid. I took students, they did research. I had to go chaperone the students doing the research. So I got to be 6 weeks in Venezuela twice. I've led study abroad in Germany, Switzerland, and Italy was one trip. China was another trip. France was another trip. Brazil was another trip. So who's not having fun? So here's some of the pictures of some of the cool places and things that have gotten to see. Let's see. Let's start at the top. So this is a gorge in South Africa. This is the Sands Hotel in Singapore. This is really cool. This is, as an engineer, this one just geeks me out, right? So it's 3 57-story buildings. These are hotels. So in this building is a hotel rooms. And they are connected across the top by this weird looking surfboard kind of structure that has an infinity pool, a restaurant, and a nightclub. So can you imagine the precision that has to go with those 3 buildings to have them all be at the same height so you can lay this thing across the top, right? So that was exciting. This is Salto Angel in Venezuela. It's Angel Falls, if you translate it to English. It's the world's tallest and longest natural waterfall. So you have to ride in a boat for 4 hours to get over there to it. There's no running water, no electricity. You're camping out. You slept in a hammock wrapped in mosquito nets. It was amazing. And they roasted rotisserie chicken over an open pit. So, and then there's Stonehenge, which probably many of you have seen. Christ the Redeemer, the Corcovado in Brazil. This is the Opera House in Sydney. These are the falls in Brazil. And then this crazy picture is in St. Martin. So if you go to St. Martin, the famous thing that everybody does is they go to the fence where the planes take off. And when the exhaust kicks back, it blows you across the sand. I was not that adventurous, so I stood off to the side and held onto the fence because I didn't want to get blown away. But as a result of my travels, the work that I've done, I've gotten to have a lot of fun in the process. So the lessons for you, I'm not going to read them all to you, but these are the lessons that I've learned. And hopefully, as each of you are going through your journey, you can find some words of wisdom in some of these that helps you stay a course, because we desperately need you. So I'm going to share this last quote from Maya, and then I'm going to go to the second part about why we need you. So this has stuck with me since I read that book in grad school. I know exactly, it was 1995 when I read Wouldn't Take Nothing for My Journey. But each of us has the right and the responsibility to assess the roads which lie ahead and those over which we've traveled. So think about that. You're looking ahead to where you want to go, and you're looking back to where you've been, okay? And those over which we've traveled. If the future road looms ominous or unpromising, and the road back uninviting, so that means I don't want to go back to where I came from, and I don't want to stay and go forward, then it says we need to gather our resolve, taking only the necessary baggage, and step off that road into a whole nother direction, right? So you're going to I'm not going to go forward anymore. I'm not going to go backwards. I'm going to go do something different. Okay, so you go do something different, and now you're on this new path. And you're like, all right, I'm going along, and you know, the new path isn't working out so well either. So now if the new choice is unpalatable, without embarrassment, we must be ready to change again. So what Dr. Angelo has done in this quote is say, don't like where you're going, don't like where you've been, go do something different. You go to something different, that's not working out, go to something else different. There's always something else you can do. And I think a lot of people get stuck. They go back to that turtle. It's not working. They recoil into their little shell. They don't take a risk. They don't step off. They just get stuck. And we can't afford to have some of you get stuck. We need you to go off and do really great things. All right, so we need you. Why do we need you? Because women hold up half the sky, right? This is a famous quote from one of the communist leaders in China way back when, which gave a lot of credence to China's wanting to talk about gender equity. But he said, women hold up half the sky. So let's look at that. So women are 50% of the population, that's the globe, and women are 50% of all degrees. So at the associate's level, the bachelor's level, the master's level, and the PhD level, women are 50% of the degrees except in engineering and computer science. We are half the population in all, half population of women is women, 50% in biology, chemistry, English, psychology, sociology, business, law, but only about 20% in engineering and computer science. And one of the things, I've been doing some work with this colleague out at Stanford on gendered innovations. And so the work that we've been doing is looking at intersectionality and looking at intersectionality in design. So we've all been in a car and we've all ridden in a seatbelt. So I'm going to use that as an example. So when seatbelts were first introduced, all the testing was done on the male body. And at that time, the average man was like 6'2", 190 pounds. So they built seatbelts for a man that was 6'2" and 190 pounds. Then they said, oh yeah, we got to think about women. Well, women are about 60% or 30% or whatever percent of the male form. So we'll just knock off 60% or 30% or whatever the percent is, and that's how we're going to course correct for women. They didn't think about the fact that we might have to carry children and be in the car and be pregnant. They didn't think about the fact that we have breasts and men don't. Most men don't. And so there's a huge design problem by the fact that they did not consider gender in the design. And part of the reason we don't consider gender is because we're not represented. So if there's no women in the room when you're discussing it, then you don't think about designing for women. Another example is AI. And I know this is Grace Hopper, so you guys are all up on AI, but I go over and talk to the folks at American Airlines a lot, right? So they're trying to think about how to board planes faster. So their thing is, instead of having a boarding pass and you got to turn your boarding pass over or turn your phone over, they wanted to use facial recognition. And so the diverse employees of American are like, no, we shouldn't do facial recognition because that's in some ways seen as profiling, or our faces, our skin tone is different colors. It doesn't pick it up as much. It won't pick it up and be as reliable. Or people of color are so used to being profiled, they're going to be leery of a system that scans them and it's going to cause more problems. Again, if there was not diversity in the room, if there wasn't representation in the room, then we wouldn't even have these conversations. So we have to have more people getting degrees so we can have these conversations. Okay, so here's what the representation looks like. If you look at this chart, so this chart is high school graduates. This chart is first time in college. This time is bachelor's degree in computing, engineering and computing. And I just realized that the little bottom got screwed up a little bit. So let me try to, in high school, This is what's important. White men and white women. Let's just go with that. So pretty even, right? First time in college, pretty even. But then look at degrees. Women drop off this much, and look how much men increase. And then the red, and I'm sorry that the chart got a little bit messed up, but the red are international persons, and that's international men. So what you see is, you know, in college, at the undergrad level, international men are a very small percentage. It's first time in college, first time freshmen. But look at their degrees, look at their master's degrees, look at the PhDs. Look at how even white men have dropped off with the PhD. So we need to have better balance. Our degree granting at the PhD needs to look a whole lot more like this one, with some increases other places, right? That's what I say we need you guys. All right, so this shows it a little bit differently for women in engineering and computer science. You can just see women and how it tapers off, right? So this is, the green is 2016, bachelor's degrees, number in thousands versus percent women. So that's where I get to that 20% in engineering, and it's a little bit less than 20% in CS, right? But yet it gets a little bit better as you go up. But look how small the numbers are. The percentages are more respectable, but look how small the numbers are, right, in comparison. So when we talk about intersectionality, it's talking about, you know, looking at all of who a person is, not just their gender. So with the scholar that created intersectionality created it because there were Black women at General Motors who were not getting promoted. And what they said was white women were getting promoted and Black men were getting promoted. But the intersection of Black and women were not getting promoted. And so they sought legal action. And this lawyer at UCLA is the one who coined the term intersectionality. And then it's been broadened to look at beyond just race and gender. There are lots of different intersections that people have. So it's important that we look at all of that as we think about solving the world's problems that we're experiencing. So I love this quote from Audre Lorde, who says, "It's not our differences that divide us, it's our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences." And I think that's important, particularly for the Jonsson School and for computer science, because it's engineering as a whole is lacking in diversity, engineering and computer science. And then there are more international persons studying computer science, and yet they don't think about always all of the differences about people so that we are bringing whole-mindedness to our solutions. So it's really important. Okay, so then this just shows you science and engineering degrees to women of color. So you can kind of look at this and see, and this is at the bachelor's level over time. So the green line is in psychology, right? And this red line is African Americans in engineering. The red line is Hispanics in computer science. This brown line is Hispanics in engineering. So you can see we're really not seeing a lot of diversity in the underrepresented group. So going back to that intersection, it's not enough to just have more women, but we need to have women from all backgrounds pursuing these degrees. And then these are just the bachelor's degrees pulled out in CS and engineering. Actually, I think the last chart must have been PhDs. Yes. No. Yes, PhDs. And then here's the bachelor's degrees in engineering and science. And you can kind of see over time, it's actually dropped off a lot for African Americans, for women in computer science, it dropped off. For women in engineering, the blue line, the Hispanic line is getting a little bit better, but not a whole lot. And when you look at the demographics of the country, we're seeing that the Hispanic population is the fastest growing in the country. So we need their numbers to keep pace. Okay, so that one was supposed to drop. So this one is, I love this picture. because it just reminds me, is it from a NASA, from the Apollo 13, when if you ever saw the movie Apollo 13, they started having problems. The problem was, how do we get them back? And look at the room. All men, all white, trying to solve the problem. And there's just going to be, there's a gentleman named Bill Wolfe. He's a very famous computer scientist who was president of the National Academy of Engineering. And he talks about the pale male design, and that we can't have just pale male design bringing solutions to our problems. Okay, so then in the workplace, this is what the workplace looks like. And so you can see men in engineering, men in computer science and math, men in life and physical science, and then non-STEM. And then look what happens for female, how disproportionate we are in engineering and computer science, but yet we outpace men in life and physical sciences and in non-STEM occupations. So it's really important that we have you all. And I think I'm going to stop there. And let me go down to, oops, I jumped it in twice. So let me go down to this slide and invite you to, hang on, where's my shared window? It won't let me pop this up. I just happen to love this slide. So let me invite you to pick my brain. And I think we're going to have some questions. So hopefully you guys have some things that you'd like to know a little bit more about. I couldn't cover everything in the time that we had, but hopefully I've given you a good starting point. So thanks, Karen, for the introduction. Let me try to figure out how to unshare my screen, go back to Teams, go back to the meeting. What is going on with my Teams today? Okay, I can't figure out, here we go. Here's a stop share. User error. Don't tell anybody the dean has challenges with Teams some days. I only spend half the day on Teams, so I should have it down pretty good, but in any case. Okay, so anybody have any questions? Anything you want to know? Anything you thought I would talk about and didn't? You're all bored and went to sleep. See, we should have been in the room. I could have cheered you all up.
That was a very good talk, Dr. Adams. I really, really enjoyed listening to you. Just your point, your comment about, not sort of testing well in exams. I sort of share that in the sense that although I did quite well, but always came short. And so that's one of the reasons I'm very reluctant to give like tough exams to students, because it doesn't really test their ability. It just tests how not nervous they are. You see what I mean? Because if they are really confident and so on, they can do well in the exams. So sometimes it just tests the memory, and other times I'm saying not nervous, but you know what I mean, the word, right? Not anxious. So I don't think the exams, I went through like the British system. I'm originally a Tamil from Sri Lanka. And so we're very used to the British system, which is even more horrible than the United States, because at least in the US, you sort of get your grades with assignments and so on. An exam is not really a major part, maybe 50%. But I don't like that exam system. So my question, what do you think we should do?
So one of the things, I had a professor in grad school who believed in competencies as opposed to exams.
Yeah.
So for example, he would say, okay, at the beginning of the semester, tell me what you know about artificial intelligence. And you have to score yourself on a scale like what you thought you know. And he might have given us, 20 topics that were germane to the subject. So I was taking a total quality management class. So he gave, actually it was 50 topics. He gave us 50 topics relevant to total quality management. What do you know about, where would you score yourself on your knowledge about these 50? And then we had to identify 20 that we wanted to know a whole lot about. And then there were 10 that he picked that we had to know about. And then over the course of the semester, we had to demonstrate how we learned and moved from knowledge to synthesis, and our ability to understand and utilize the topic. Now, for undergrads, I don't know how you scale that down, but for grad students, it was amazing, because what it did was it put you on your own self-paced learning scale, and you had to document and defend your knowledge. And so what we turned in at the end of the semester were like 2 notebooks that were like this thick. And it was, I could have read an article, I could have done an assignment, I could have gone to a talk, I could have done all these different things that documented my knowledge. So I think as professors and scholars, it's up to us to figure out alternate ways to test knowledge.
Right.
And sometimes it doesn't have to be all about can I solve for X and get the right answer, but can I give, you know, different types of projects or some other kind of way that a student can demonstrate proficiency.
Right. So I give them I took advantage in the pandemic time, gave them take-home exams, and I'm continuing to do so. But again, the problem there is that we don't know. I mean, I try to check, Turnitin and so on to see there's no cheating, but one never knows. So
Right.
There's not a perfect solution. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Karen, you had your hand up?
Yes, I wonder if you had any advice as a member of different underrepresented groups, as a woman, as a person of color, for how you deal with in the workplace when you face microaggressions or situations like that. What's your standard way of dealing with that?
So I'm probably really a bad person to ask about that. And here's why. My background, and this is going to sound really Pollyanna, I was always the only Black kid. So I never really even sometimes knew that I was different, right? I mean, my friends didn't treat me any differently. So when I went away to college, when I started at Wisconsin, that was a predominantly white institution. I was in my comfort zone, actually, because that's how I spent most of my life, and the kind of things that I was interested in and engaged in. Like, for example, I was on the swim team. I was the only Black kid on the swim team. I was in the ski club. I was the only Black kid in the ski club. So the things that I did connected me with people. So it wasn't really until I was like an adult, and I mean within the last 5 to 7 years, that I really started experiencing microaggressions and things like that as a woman and a woman leader. But I think I go back to the fact that I've had such good mentoring, and I was, I could see it. I could have conversations with people. I tend to bring data to my conversations. So when people say to me, why is it important to talk about gender? Because half the population are women, and in engineering, not half the population of people getting degrees are women. So we got to do something different, right? So I try to always do it as an educational exercise, as opposed to I'm beating somebody on the head to make them behave differently as an exercise. And thus far, that has worked for me. I can't say it will work for everybody else, but it has worked for me, and I've been pleased with how my life has turned out. So I don't know if that really answers your question or not. It's not easy. I'll own that it's not easy. But I think most people, I have found more people to be receptive to that approach than some other people that I know that want to beat you over the head every time you say the wrong word, or you don't acknowledge, or you do something else. And I think you have to meet people where they are and try to bring them along, help educate them on why that may not have been the best way to speak to someone or handle something. Ovidio, at some point you had your hand up. I don't know if that was an accident or not.
Oh, I just wanted to get the question started. It was at the beginning. I want to say that was a very interesting, very impressive talk. Actually, my question would have been, if you are looking back at what you did, how many of the choices you made you think are random choices, results of random encounters. And I'm talking here about major choices. Like, for example, getting into a degree. One could get into computer science by a very long thought process, or could have got into computer science just by random choice without even knowing what computer science is, and then do great. So how many of those choices do you think they were just by chance, like random choices, and how many were really thought in advance?
Well, most of my friends who know me would tell you all of my choices have been very planned out. And I have a really good friend. She's like, I didn't plan anything. She's an associate dean at a top 20 engineering school. She was president of a professional society. She worked at NSF. She's like, I planned nothing. Stuff just happened to me. I'm the 180 degree opposite. I want to do this in 5 years. I'm going to do that in 7 years. I'm going to do this in 10 years. I'm going to be here in 20 years. I'm going to be here at 50. I'm going to be here at whatever. I've been very orchestrated. Now, I think because of that, there probably have been some things that were by happenstance, but it would be so hard for me to go back and pick those out because everything I said I was going to do, I pretty much have done. But the goal has changed, right? So I never became a physician, but that's okay because having that goal early on kept me focused on my studies, kept me prioritizing math and science. So when engineering presented itself as an option, I was ready. Now, I'm sure at 7, engineering was around. I just didn't know any engineers. So it wasn't until my dad started working with engineers when we were at Notre Dame that I'm like, oh, engineering is a profession. But if I hadn't been, we know that women and kids of color are counseled as early as 7th grade out of math and science. So if I hadn't had the goal to be a physician, I wouldn't have been thinking about math and science. So I say very little of my life has been by chance, and most of it has been by design. Norma, I saw your hand up. Thanks for your question, Ovidio.
You're welcome.
Hi, Dean Adams. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Norma.
Hi. So we've heard everything and everything was great, but in all things we have a human side. So I'm going to put you on the spot, and I want to know some things that help keep you grounded. Like, what's your favorite sport? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite food? What's your favorite country? I want to hear that. What's your favorite jewelry? Earrings, a necklace? I want to hear that. That's what helps keep us a focus in our schools because we have to be able to be human. So there you go.
Okay. Thank you, Norma. All right. So favorite sport was always basketball, but I can't play it anymore because my knees are too bad. So now I golf when I have time. And I bicycle. So you know that I cycle. Favorite color, blue and orange, not necessarily together. Hobby, traveling and photography. So I just bought myself a new lens. I like taking pictures of the moon. So I go out in the middle of the street at like midnight, 2 in the morning. I have a little schedule that tells me when the moon's going to be full. And I'm out in the backyard taking pictures of the moon. Favorite place is Aruba. And actually, I talk about working hard so you can play hard. One of my colleagues that I mentor, she says she works for her toys. That's her mantra, work for my toys. So my latest toy, I just bought a condo in Aruba. It's my vacation spot. So any weekend that I get a long weekend and you're looking for me, I'm probably going to be down there now. Because that's the part, that's where it keeps me grounded. I like peaceful places, and that's about as peaceful as it gets for me. I feel completely at ease there. I get a massage every Monday at 7 o'clock. That's another treat for myself. So I work for my toys. So I have a massage therapist, and actually now I'm at a point where my massage therapist comes to the house. So I don't have to go out to the salon. I can, like I fell asleep on the table last night. When I fell asleep, she just left, locked the door. I woke up about 30 minutes after she finished, and I'm like, oh, okay, let me go do something else. So I very much have good balance, I think. I take 1 weekend a month that I don't do any email. I mean, I kind of look at it because, like, you know, the provost might send something on the weekend, but by and large, I don't do email 1 weekend a month. I'm very spiritual, more so than religious. So I'm always trying to look for things to be centered and grounded. So I've got my aromatherapy, my jazz, my candles. So, and as a matter of fact, the house here in Plano, it's really peaceful. So I call it the sanctuary. And the house in Aruba is called Solitude. So I have a name for my houses, which reflect the mindset that I want to have when I'm there.
Cool. Thanks for that.
You're welcome. Thanks for your question.
Yeah.
Bhavani?
Can I ask one more? Yeah. So maybe I'm going to put you in a spot too, Dr. Adams. So you said that everything that you have done is sort of, maybe this was not your exact word, but by design, right? So what are your plans for the future?
Oh, wow. Well, so that's been interesting. So in 2004, I set my goal to become a university president. In 2018, I decided I don't want to be a university president. Mm-hmm. So I spent about 1.5 years scratching my head going, this is the first time in my life I haven't had a goal. And I had a lot of stress about that. It's like, I don't have a goal. So if I don't have a goal, what's my purpose, right? And I was talking to some friends and they were like, well, okay, what do you like doing? I love my job now. So I could be dean as long as they'll have me. As long as y'all will have me, I'm happy to be the dean. I don't need to go be provost somewhere or president somewhere else. I guess my new dream job, I think I could say it out loud. I don't think it'll ever happen, but we have to have dreams for a reason. I would love to be the head of NSF.
Okay.
That would be really super cool.
Good. Yeah.
That would be super cool.
And then when you become the head, Dr. Adams, please make me your senior technical advisor or something.
That sounds good, Bhavani. That sounds really good. So right now, I'm really just focused on the Jonsson School and making the Jonsson School is great. It's like good to great, right? The book Good to Great. We've done a lot. I think there's a lot more we could do. And I'm anxious and excited to get out of the pandemic and, roll up our sleeves with the faculty and staff and our students and figure out, what our next steps are. What's the Jonsson School 3.0 going to look like, right? In our 4.0, I guess we're going in our 4th decade. So as we think about that, what does it look like? And being comfortable, not thinking about the next step, which is kind of interesting because, even though every job I had, I've been focused on that job, but I've had one